Wake up, America, wake up. Tonight, I'm not going to follow a script. Normally, I use a script because it keeps me focused on the subject matter. Tonight's podcast is going to be about the Zelensky-Trump meeting. I think it's important that we understand what transpired and what the possible results are. Now, of course, I'm going to deliver my opinion based on my interpretation of the events. But at the end of this podcast, you'll have to decide whether what I think is appropriate for that situation and what you walk away with after this podcast. So I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight, and I look forward to getting some feedback on my thoughts. So here we go. I know by now everybody has a perception of what happened during that meeting. What I will tell you is that prior to President Zelensky, they were in a room discussing the mineral rights, possibly discussing whether or not there would be more financial aid handed to the Ukrainian government. Then afterwards, they came out, they were in front of the press in the Oval Office, and they had a discussion which started out pretty friendly. But it is my perception that Zelensky had another idea in mind. He thought that he was going to be able to roll over on President Trump and not make demands, because you don't do that, especially when you're a dictator. You don't make demands of the president who has the authority and the power via Congress to package a deal that gives you more taxpayer dollars. But I think it's pretty clear that President Trump slammed the door shut on any more money, taxpayer dollars, going to Ukraine, considering that President Zelensky can't even account for 58% of the money. Then where is the money? We were looking at him, Zelensky, the Ukrainian government, as partners, not as NATO members, because keep in mind that if Ukraine joined NATO, they would be the closest nation on the border of the Russian Federation, which of course would be a violation of the agreement was that NATO would not expand any further than it has. But history shows us that NATO did expand. Now, this war that started under President Biden's watch is what I call, and I don't know if you're going to see it that way, as a proxy war, meaning that this war is being fought by Ukraine on our behalf. But getting back to the meeting, he thought that he was going to roll over on our current president, Donald J. Trump. And when it started getting close to talking about peace with the Russian Federation, well, Zelensky didn't want to have any of that. I just want you to support us, give us money, give us arms so we can continue this war. And that's not what the president ran on. He ran on the campaign promise that he would end this war his first day in office, which he didn't. And I didn't expect him to, because that's not possible. First of all, he'd have to reach out to Vladimir Putin. He'd have to reach out to President Zelensky and get them together, at least commit to a ceasefire so they can come to the table and talk about peace and talk about the terms of peace. But Zelensky wasn't having that, and it became very obvious that all he wanted was to continue war. And I'll tell you why he wants to continue war. Because not only does he get arms from the United States, he gets money, taxpayer dollars. That's what he gets to finance this war and his ego. Now, I know there's people out there that support Ukraine, but how can you support Ukraine if the president is a dictator? Oh, did I hurt somebody's feelings? Yes, he's a dictator. Why? Because he's canceled elections. It's no longer a democracy when you cancel the right of your citizens to vote. And then there is the arms that the United States has sold him, and he wants to sell those. Why? If you're in a war, why would you sell arms? There's money to be made when you sell arms. So not only is he a dictator, but he wants to become an arms dealer. He wants to sell our arms. I mean, didn't we give away enough arms in Afghanistan with President Joe Biden? And we're going to have a repeat of that? So it was at that point that President Trump was like, okay, let me step on the brakes here and bring this guy into focus. We want to end the war because millions of Ukrainians have died. Millions of Ukrainians that you've dragged off the streets and put them in uniform to fight this war. That's not a democracy. I think President Trump has realized that we can no longer maintain a status of being the world's police. Maintain the status of being the world's bank. We can no longer do that. Not at taxpayer expense, because it does not serve American interests. American interests, you and me, it doesn't serve anything. It only serves the military-industrial complex, both sides of the aisle, that benefit from the money that comes in during wartime. There's no profit if there's no war, because we arm countries with these weapons. And half the time, the countries that we arm with weapons, we're paying the military-industrial complex with taxpayer dollars to arm other countries. In this case, we've given billions of dollars to Ukraine. And I hope that you realize that 58% of the money that we've used to finance this war, well, according to Volodymyr Zelensky, he doesn't know where that money is. He can't account for 58% of the money that we sent him. It sure as hell hasn't gone into the Ukrainian population, to feed them, to house them, to rebuild everything that's been destroyed. No, it hasn't. I mean, this is not the first time, I can tell you, based on a podcast that I researched on Ukrainian history. Ukraine has always been a corrupt nation. Always. And during World War II, they were co-allies of the Nazis. And even the current military that exists in Ukraine is questionably neo-Nazi in their makeup. But in any case, when President Trump tells Zelensky, no, that you're going to be on your own if you can't come to the table and discuss peace. We will not support you. You will have to do this on your own. And folks, I agree with him. If all you want is to be a dictator and receive arms and money from us, and you're not willing to talk peace with the Russian Federation, then you get neither. And I think that's what the ultimatum was. Now, you're going to have the Democrats and you're going to have some rhinos. They're going to say, oh, Trump did the wrong thing. He shouldn't have chastised him. Yes, he did exactly what he promised. He wants to end this war. Obviously, President Trump doesn't want it in his hands, because President Joe Biden, he's soaked in the blood of those Ukrainian soldiers and civilians that have died during that war. Now, I don't support Putin, but I understand where he's coming from. But my point is that under the terms, there would be no more NATO expansion. And I also have a podcast that covers that. NATO expansion, how the promises were broken. And then our side said, well, it wasn't written in stone. So it goes to show you that even the very word of the political leadership or the government of the United States, if you don't write it down, then the agreement is null and void. And that was very concerning for Putin. Because what you need to understand also is that Ukraine, if you look it up in the map, it's right at the doorstep, the border of the Russian Federation. His motives to protect his homeland, were of great concern to him, because if Ukraine became part of NATO, what happens when you become part of NATO? Well, then you have U.S. troops, you have U.S. weapons right at your doorstep. You may not see it, but you need to study history and understand that the United States made that promise that NATO would not expand. And during the course of time, NATO was still expanding. So we already defaulted on that agreement. And I guess someone had a bright idea. Well, let's create a proxy war between Ukraine and the Russian Federation and see how that goes. Well, it hasn't gone well, because it's been going on for over 3 years. Putin has been very stern in saying that if this continues, that if NATO gets involved, this is a declaration of war. I feel that when Mikhail Gorbachev came into power, he was very sincere about wanting to end the Cold War. There has been talk about the Russian Federation being a part of NATO, but they were denied. Why? I mean, to have your biggest enemy during the Cold War to be part of NATO, why would you deny such an alliance? That's the type of unity that, one could presume you would want, because it actually pulls the fangs out of the bear. But no, we started a proxy war. And I say, yes, we started a proxy war against the Russian Federation with Ukraine. And there's a lot of backstory that you don't realize about Ukraine, especially the bio labs that we were funding in Ukraine. And Putin and his government were very much aware of it, and that was very concerning. I mean, for God's sake, we just came out of a pandemic under the Biden administration. So, I mean, it might sound like fear-mongering, but you have to look at it from the perspective of someone outside of it, someone who's not taking the United States side or the Russian Federation side of what's going on in Europe. And that's one of the things that I guess is very concerning about what Zelensky said to the president, that because we are separated by an ocean, that soon you'll understand and feel what could possibly happen, which to me comes off as a threat. And that, of course, triggered President Trump and told him, look, tough guy, you're not going to talk to me like that. You're not going to talk and insult the American people like that and predict what's going to happen to us. The President of the United States is running on the campaign promise of America first. And we need to start getting used to that, because we haven't had a president that has done that for us. We have to come first. Our tax dollars need to take care of our people, our citizens, our homeless, our veterans. Build our roads. Rebuild our economy. And I think that under the Trump administration, he's trying to bring us to our senses as a people to realize what's going on. That we're being screwed over, not only by both sides of the aisle who are part of the deep state, but that they're using our money to finance wars, to finance dictatorships, because there's a profit to be made. Again, back to Zelensky. Zelensky is a dictator, without a doubt. He thought he could come into the Oval Office and, and make a mockery of our generosity. Even though I never voted to send money to Ukraine from day one, I never voted for it, because I knew that was a money pit. But someone profits, of course. The military-industrial complex, they profit. Absolutely. But we the people, we don't. Like I said, we can no longer afford to be the world's piggy bank, because we have a deficit that we have to worry about, which is at, what, over $3 trillion? That's ridiculous. The budget has to be balanced. And all this waste, fraud, and abuse, I mean, it really brings things together with this meeting that the president had with Zelensky, and it brings clarity. It brings clarity that there is corruption. But not only that, that Zelensky is also a spokesperson for the deep state. He's definitely the spokesperson. He's the front man for those people that profit from this war. There has to be peace, folks. And what President Trump did, he didn't damage anything between Ukraine and the United States. He brought it into perspective. He brought it into the light. And he was saying no more. And that's what we should be saying. No more. We can no longer support this war. And I'll be damned if we're going to send U.S. troops to fight this war for him, because that's something that he said before.
The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war. And they will have to fight, because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying.
A war that, yes, from the intelligence perspective, we started. But it doesn't benefit us. What interest does it serve? You're not going to take down the Russian Federation, but you might start World War III. And folks, that's a reality, because nuclear weapons exist. In any case, when Zelensky was getting chastised, the president told him, look, I made you a tough guy, because you had the United States backing you up. But if you can't come to the table and talk peace, then you do it on your own. You fight the war on your own. And buddy, I don't think you would last 2 to 3 days. Again, we cannot be the world's police. And we cannot back somebody who's not willing to go to the table and discuss peace with his enemy. We're trying to broker that peace so that civilian and military soldiers' lives that are fighting those wars on both sides, that there's no longer death and blood. Because the United States is washed with it. Our hands are in that death and blood. And whether you like it or not, that is a fact. And J.D. Vance, you know, he kind of summed it up, you know, when he said, you know, you're being disrespectful. Where's the thank you? Disrespectful son of a bitch, man, the way I see it. And I really hope that the president stays firm on this. I know that there are NATO countries saying that, you know, they're going to back up Zelensky and the Ukrainian nation. Fine, do it. Do it. Spend your money. Give them your military supplies. Because the United States is cutting it off. That's it. I mean, if you recall, President Trump, under his first term, he wanted to get out of NATO. Why? Because we were flipping the bill for more. And I even had some idiot who was posting that, well, the United States is not paying more than the European Union. How many countries are in the European Union, asshole? And you're going to compare those countries that make up the European Union and the contributions of us alone, the United States of America? How foolish, how stupid. But that's the problem with our society. That is the problem with the Democratic Party, the left, and the liberals. They only see it one way while negating everything else involved in the facts. What I care about is getting the truth out there. What you do with it is up to you. You know, I can only lead a horse to water, but I can't make the horse fucking drink. And that's my opinion. And I see things a little bit different, a little clearly. And it's not that I'm a extremist MAGA supporter. I support the president. There's certain things that I don't agree on, but I support him. I voted for the guy. I have no shame in that. And I told you guys that I would hold President Trump accountable for things that I disagree with. It would be unscrupulous of me not to look into what the Trump administration is doing, not question motives. It would be very unscrupulous. When Biden was the president, I scrutinized everything. I didn't vote for him, but I scrutinized everything. And I'm going to be just as hard with the Trump administration because I put my support behind them, as most of you do. Because there have been some disappointments. I like so far what the president has been doing. I like the fact that he stood up to this Napoleon-like dictator. So far, he's done so good. I mean, he hasn't taken over Greenland, and he hasn't made Canada, which I think is a very beautiful country, has a very long history, and could be a very promising ally if you get rid of their deep staters, like Justin Trudeau. And as far as the Gaza Strip, you know, yes, we can help rebuild, but we can't give the Gaza Strip and turn it into a development that's only going to benefit Israel. And I am a strong supporter of Israel, but again, you know, if there's something that I disagree with, I'm going to voice my opinion about it. Back to Zelensky. So after that meeting, you know, I keep hearing that he was kicked out, you know, because of his behavior. I mean, because it was a heated exchange between the president and Zelensky. I've never seen anything like that before. It kind of shows you how determined President Trump is to get Putin and Zelensky at the table and, you know, and encourage peace. We don't need more bloodshed. And I'm pretty sure the globalists are happy with what Trump did, because they will do everything to undermine him and the campaign promises that he made. Because under the first term of President Trump, there wasn't any wars. Okay? I mean, President Trump was very clear that if he had been president, October 7th would never have happened, and this Russian-Ukrainian war would never have taken place. Whether or not that's true, I have no idea, because he wasn't the president then. It's a possibility. I mean, he's a very good negotiator. And I think that his attempt to curtail this Zelensky character, who, like I said, is a dictator, I think it shows that he's not part of the status quo. He's not part of that, and we shouldn't be, and we should support him. We should support those things that I feel benefit us, not Zelensky, not Putin. And of course, they're going to be upset with the turn of events during the Trump-Zelensky meeting. Of course, they're going to be upset, because it didn't go their way. Because that means that their bank accounts are going to take a hit. The root of all evil is money. We all know that. And I think this is what's happening with Zelensky. He got so addicted to American tax dollars that he thought he can schmooze his way into the White House and tell President Trump, hey, I want this, I want that. You want. No. So, folks, tell me what you think. Tell me if you agree with what I'm talking about. Tell me if you disagree. But I say support for Ukraine, it needs to stop right now. Okay, I understand, that without us, they can't do anything. But look, we're trying to bring the end of this war. We're trying to end it. We're trying to, stop the waste, fraud, and abuse, the money that's going into this country, of which, like I said, 58% of it, he doesn't know where it is. But I'm pretty sure that if we follow the money, we'll see that the corrupt politicians in the United States and the corrupt politicians in Ukraine, they've got the money. They got the payoff. So, folks, thank you for taking time out. And I'm sorry that was off script, but I just had to speak my mind. So, like I always tell you, wake up, America, wake up. I'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you very much.